Hello, hello. How's everyone doing today? It's Sunday. It's fall equinox. It's that balance of light and dark within the day. It's the beginning of going more inward, so to speak. And yeah, Norma Jean, what's your take on it?
Oh, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. These transitional periods, when you come to understand the truth of the significance of the reason why there's seasons, it actually gives you that clarity of understanding why those seasons exist and what they're for and what they are utilized and how they're utilized. Especially as far as where us as a human species is concerned, we play a huge and significant role in all that. And, a lot of that just comes to the full recognition of why we're here, who we are, what gifts we bring with us to assist the collective in humanity as a whole, along with Mother Earth in this beautiful thing called ascension.
Absolutely. And we've got Jon here, who's supposed to be here today. All right, Jon, I'm posting this link. This link is for Jon, everybody. Otherwise, we're going to bring you on live. So if you dare come in, you may be put on stage. And if you would like that, click the link.
Come right on in.
Right? Yeah, all good. I'm glad Jon jumped on. Hello, Desiron and Berkeley. Of course you're here. Awesome. We're super grateful you're here. We are also live over on Instagram and super excited about that. So we shall see how that unfolds, along with LinkedIn, which I don't really see the profile. So if you're on LinkedIn and you want to comment, I highly recommend going over to YouTube for that. So yeah, absolutely. And there's Jon. So we brought Jon in as well for this visit today. We didn't even know we were doing a fall equinox. Hold on, let me pop that off.
Yeah,
I just realized that today too. Good
Right?
to see you, by the way.
Yeah, of course, of course it is. Oh, I know we've got a better. Let me play around with the settings. Hold on, I lost you.
It's like the Brady Bunch.
Right? No, I love it. I was getting that before we even came on here.
Right?
It's going through my head.
Right. But what I'm confused about is why we're not a little closer. That's okay. We'll figure it out. Not a big deal. All right.
Right.
You're on your phone. We're all tiny. Which then just brings in, we're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony. Yeah. It's been an interesting day so far. Yeah. So in this fall equinox, Jon, what have you been up to for fall equinox? Have you been up to anything? What is your take on this, and how does it affect your life?
Yeah, emphasis on loony for sure. A lot of lunacy, I think, is the word, especially because of the moon and all of that. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I remember the week of the eclipse, or probably like, the month of the eclipse, everybody on the streets was talking about it, including the background people. It was like, the number one conversation of, oh, how's the weather? It's like everybody was talking about the energy. And that's how everything has been this week too, where it's like every conversation that I'm having with anybody, everybody's asking me what's going on, what are the planets doing, what's happening. So everybody's feeling that kind of the tower moment energy, really, that it is a lot of like deconstruction, reconstruction. I've been getting a lot of Phoenix cards and like the private readings that I've been doing. So people are experiencing a lot of that, and just frustrating, annoying stuff, I think too. A lot of that is happening to people to kind of either encourage them to let go of certain things or even to double down on certain things. Because I think that that's an energy that's moving through too, is it's like experiencing an earthquake near something you love and realizing how much you love it because of that earthquake, where it's like, oh, I really want to hold on to this. I want to double down on this because
Right.
of that kind of energy. So it's almost, it's like it's kind of like forcing people's hand in terms of making choices. I think that's a lot of the energy right now.
A lot of letting go right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. The full moon purge as we drop into fall equinox. Yeah, it's definitely been that. as well as, in the background, there's some other things in the higher realms, so to speak. There's been a lot going on as well that is kind of just gonna take some time, space to filter down. But I am finding, do you have any body symptoms at all?
Since the eclipse, so that would have been Tuesday for me. So waking up Wednesday morning, I felt as though my body clock in general is different. I don't know how
Yeah,
else to describe it, but I felt okay. Like it hasn't been a lot of lethargy, almost maybe even like more sensitive to caffeine, where it's like maybe I don't need it as much because I take 1 cup of coffee and I feel so wired.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it just feels like my algorithm is slightly different, sleep patterns slightly different. And it's interesting because we had a conversation, a private conversation about feeling like the frequencies are different and things like that. And I've seen this one news story that keeps coming across my news feed about this 8 billion-year-old radio frequency that's hitting us right now. And all of these different outlets are calling it a radio frequency, which I think is, it's interesting because it's like they're doing that with intention. And it's kind of clickbait, but then you read it and they say that this sound that's hitting us, they think comes from the origin of the universe, right? So the Big Bang or the beginning, but it makes me wonder if it's almost like
right.
cryptically implying that it's like the original frequency or something like that. But I have to imagine that, if everything else kind of affects us, how that's affecting us and being added to this soup
Right.
and everything else.
Absolutely. Soup, frequency soup.
Exactly. Yeah.
Energy soup. And I'm making chicken soup. So my daughter last night, I was
Ooh.
doing a bunch of organic chicken carcasses last night. And the whole house, she's like, "What are you cooking? It smells so good." I'm like, "Oh, you don't get to eat it for a couple days." I'm such a tease. So we're having roast chicken tonight for her sake. And then I just really want the ingredients for to add to the soup. But yeah, so I go into fall mode of more warm food, more nurturing in that way, having more cacao, um, and energetically the frequency, yeah, it's definitely a vibration shift going on. I trust that, not show aside, the whole show aside, whatever's playing out there is playing out there and it'll always play out. So giving my attention to it is only, you know, wasting my energy. So really spending more time with self and sitting outside, even on the front lawn, having, tea or coffee there and hanging out with nature has been more of a go-to. Reading a bit more. So it's like get quiet, a little bit quieter, soften everything because now you don't feel like, oh my God, it's sunny out and I'm missing something. I should be outside. I should be outside. There's always that in the summer because our summer's quite short here. How long's your summer?
It's decent. It's still almost summer here. I mean, today it was probably, high 70s, something like that. So, but this is the best weather that we've had, all summer, honestly. So, but we
Well, there
know
you
as soon as Halloween comes, usually Halloween is like the marker of where from that point forward, it's pretty brutal. So,
Can be.
but
go.
yeah, no, there's definitely a shift in the atmosphere, and there's more coming too because there's another eclipse that's coming in a week or so on October 2nd. That's going to be a solar eclipse. So
Yeah.
yeah, the second or third, whenever that hits, and then
Almost no mussing around, right? That's what it starts to feel like. Yeah, it's it's one of those things where this fall, up until the end of the year, it's going to be very either very intense for you or very confirmational for you. Oh yeah,
yeah,
we've been preparing for this. We've been waiting for this forever.
That's why
Yeah.
it's called an
absolutely,
equinox.
yeah.
Sorry, Norma.
That when we look at the word equinox, it's one of those. I mean, in the fall, this is that time where that balance is being brought back in due to what was taking place in summer. When you understand how we keep the balance and things, because equi is equal, and then the nox is basically, one of those knocks, that lets you know, oh, yeah, I guess I did do that summer. And I suppose it is time for me to do what I need to get that energy, shifted back where it needs to be, so I'm back in balance. It's that give and take. It's that beauty of what these seasons represent for us, and understanding that we partook of the harvest, and that's what we do during the summer. We partake of the harvest that we prepare for now, but we must understand that we have to alchemize what we have taken and give back and prepare for the new harvest for the following year.
100%. 100%. Jon, I'm curious, what do the cards have to say for the collective right now?
Well, I've been pulling tons of Phoenix cards left and right and center.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's the primary energy, or something like the Tower or something like that. But it seems that's kind of the general energy of I guess like the deconstruction, reconstruction, right? Because sometimes you just have to pour something out of your cup to pour something into it, or you have to let go of something in order to move towards something else. And that's really what it feels like right now, like almost like being pushed through a birth canal, I guess I could say. And but no, my mind went blank on, oh well. One thing that's been very interesting that I've been paying attention to is I don't know if you've seen that they keep saying that we're going to get a second moon, a temporary second moon that's going to be here from the end of September through November. And I think that that's so just poetically perfect, because it is like this random variable curveball kind of energy, because it's like, how do you even plug that into your astrology chart if you have a second moon that we can't even account for? But the language of that, I think, is just so interesting, and that, in addition to everything else that's happening, it does feel like you were saying, like in terms of like this is an energy that we've been waiting for. I really do think that that kind of once in a lifetime astrology is what's lining up now, including that supernova that they keep talking about. Because I was just reading that they expect it to happen by the end of September. And that only happens like once every 80 years. And the last time it would have happened was 1946. So like right as World War II ended, like less than a year later is when it went supernova. And then before that was 1866, which was the end of the Civil War. So these two, major events that really changed the timeline. It's like that event kind of marked the end of that war. So I feel, if anything, that's kind of a very good symbol of this thing coming. But I also think that that's the star that the Magi would have seen in terms of determining if there's any truth to that story whatsoever. It's like, where the hell did this new star come from, and how did they even know what it signified? It's like, unless it was some sort of regular occurrence that they had data to work with, I don't see how else it would have played into the story. So just seeing all of that makes me very excited in terms of anticipation that something is clearly getting ready to play out, and it seems like the stage is being set for something very interesting but unexpected, right? Because it's like, it's not on the bingo card. I feel like whatever does play out surprises everybody, so it's almost not even worth speculating of, oh, is it going to be this, is it going to be that, is it going to be disclosure and mass arrests? And it's like, I don't think so. I think I wouldn't count on it, because I don't think we need it.
No. And it's interesting that you say that. And they're telling us it's a second moon. They're telling us it's a part of a comet or asteroid. We don't know for fact anything, because we're not there to see it for self. So I'm always, if I can't verify for myself that is true, whether it's through a direct message or it's through seeing it for myself, then I'm kind of like, yeah.
Which moon?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, which moon? There's so many moons too.
I mean, Saturn has 7. Are we talking Saturn's moons? Are we talking Jupiter's, or whose moons are we talking?
And didn't one of Saturn's moons just come back around to be visible? But it's not the 7th.
The 6th one or the 7th one came out from behind one of the others.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Well, it's funny because the object itself, like you said, it's not that big. And what's funny too is that a lot of the articles say that it's only 33 feet long, which is funny in terms of that number. But also, how do they know how large this thing is? I mean, how is it possible that they can get an accurate measurement on anything that far away? But
I
it's
think
not
there's a
going to be
link.
that close.
There's
Sorry?
definitely a link to that, but not in size.
Oh, yeah, no, it just seems, the whole thing seems very cryptic. And it's funny
Oh,
because I plugged all of the information into ChatGPT to write a story about it in terms of like how it would influence life on Earth. Because again, it's like, what would it play out? And ChatGPT seems to be able to kind of comb the internet and read all of these documents and blah, blah, blah. So I plugged it in and all of the, well, first I just asked it to write a story about a second moon and it wrote, you know, a very significant story, but it didn't name the moon. The second time I asked it to write the story using the exact parameters that the media was talking about, so 33 feet long, and it was just like 5 times further than the actual moon, and blah, blah. And the second time, when I programmed in all of the information that was in all of the articles, it named the moon Lilith, which I thought was really interesting because there's so many different ways that you could read that, but it's like technically it does talk about kind of like the original feminine or something like that, the feminine that was originally displaced and then replaced by something that would have been more of like an imposter energy, which is represented by the
Right.
moon. So that whole thing just sent my mind into a spiral about, again, the original energy
Venus, anyone?
returning and yeah, right.
Venus, anyone? The
Right.
imitation of what that may be, given the energies and stuff. Scorpio. That comes to mind too.
Right.
October, Halloween. Timelines, anyone?
Yeah.
Time?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. We were talking about Halloween this morning and how, anyways, you were going to pull a couple cards. Pull the cards first before we go on. We're talking about current energies if you're just joining us. And those of you who know, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like, make sure you comment after the video. It does help with the algorithms for us. And absolutely grateful you're here today to spend a little time with us on this Sunday. We have readings with Jon here. He's from back east. He's in New York area, and we're very grateful. His insight is appreciated.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here. Okay, so I pulled some past, present, future. So for the past, I have the Knight of Pentacles, and for the present, I have the Hermit, which is interesting because we were just in Virgo season, or I guess we exited today, right? And now we're heading into Libra season, but I'm just trying to get these in front of the camera. Which way do I go? This way,
We see them.
okay. So I'm just interested in this interaction. So this is the past, and then this is the present. The Knight of Pentacles usually talks about like an energy of long-term prospecting, preparing for something, but it feels like it's kind of like, well, I guess with the Hermit, the best way to explain it is basically like an activation energy, because the thing with the Hermit is that it's like it takes forever to get into this space. It's almost like finding your own spiritual sweet spot, if that makes sense. And
Yep.
the legend of the Hermit is that, you know, they would have to completely remove themselves from society and live in a cave or do whatever it was to kind of like almost like a sensory deprivation type of experience to disconnect from the matrix and reconnect to the natural world. And one of the things that the hermits were trying to do, and it was almost like you knew that you had finally reached that state when you could start speaking what they called the green language, which was like the language of the birds, the language of nature, or something like that. And that was basically like the goal of this process, was to isolate yourself for so long that you disconnected from the inauthentic and reconnected to the
Beautiful.
authentic. And typically it's like this card, the Knight of Pentacles, talks about something that takes a while. It's like somebody that's planning something that might take 10, 20, 30 years. And this is again the energy of the past. So I think for so many of us, especially so many of us that are consciously doing the work, we do go into those phases of intense isolation and hermitude and all of that, and feeling disconnected and questioning why, and are we being punished, and are we doing something wrong? And it's like, I just honestly think that that's like a necessary aspect of this alchemical process. It's like a recipe. There's like a certain amount of time it needs to be in the oven and a certain amount of time to sit and cool, and it's like there's time is part of that recipe. And then what's coming next is the Chariot, right? So the Chariot obviously talks about forward momentum and moving forward, but it's also kind of going back to this alchemical process that you have to be in to be the Hermit. The Chariot talks about how the shadow and the light need to work together and cooperate and move forward. And it's, coming back about reintegrating that shadow. And I think that that's a big theme that I'm seeing come up right now, where it's like hitting on those very, very, very early memories, like early childhood memories and different things, and recognizing the genesis point of certain programs and how subtle it may be, and like really just getting to like the grit and the tile of our own programs and cleaning that, but also reintegrating those things. Like that really feels like the astrology is kicking up a lot of that right now, so that we can let go of false things that aren't necessary, but also bring everything back in. But then also the other aspect of the Chariot is that the Chariot in and of itself is kind of like the hyper sigil that you create in order to carry yourself forward. So the story that you write, right? And it's like, if you've ever written a story or written a song, I'm sure you've experienced one of those moments where you write something that's fictional and then it becomes reality, or you paint it in a painting and the next thing you know, it's in your life. It's like, that's what the Chariot is. And I feel like right now, everyone's just trying to figure out, okay, what do I plug into the GPS? It's like, I kind of know what I want, but I need something to hold on to. And that's what I was saying about how I feel like the astrology is really showing us what we do want to hold on to, where it's like, if something does, like if an earthquake happens in one sector of your life, you suddenly realize how much it means to you, and you're like, okay, I want this. It's like, that's the best way to express that. Did I lose
And
you guys or no? Okay.
no, it makes sense.
It zoomed in on me for a minute, so I didn't know.
It did. So I can do that in the settings. So it's just, I don't know why we're small, and I'll have to play around with that. So yeah, we had you front and center. So I'll do that when you're speaking so that you can have center stage.
No, this
Yeah.
is cool. Very high tech.
Right? It can be, except normally we would all come in quite parallel and take up the entire screen. So I'm not sure why it's playing with this background. So anyways, we're just gonna leave it as is and not be attached to it and just let it go. And as well, and hey Ada, how are you? And what you said was absolutely perfect, because as much as we discuss the wishes that one desires, you always massage it along. So if you actually got that original wish and you look back on it now, you're like, oh, good thing that didn't come all the way through, because we can elevate it and make it even better. So it's that whole surrendering, state your desires, but then just let it go. Yeah, just let it go, and go have some fun. Go enjoy your life. We got so damn serious lately. Need to lighten up a little. Yeah, lighten up and quit trying to
Well, I
figure it
guess
all out.
that's another way to interpret that, right? Like ending the hermit phase and then going out with the Chariot energy, right? Like putting yourself back out there, leaving
Yeah,
the fortress. Because
yeah,
I've had to force myself to do that in, the last couple of days. But every time that I go out, I wind up running into somebody that I know, and then it turns into a whole adventure and yada yada yada. So I have seen how it's like that really is when the magic happens, right? It's like you have to kind of go out sometimes to experience the wild opportunities and figure out what's gonna play out next, and it
um,
creates entropy too.
right. Yeah, I get out enough in the world with some work things, but also, drag everyone over to the beach the other day, and it was stunning. It was a beautiful sunset we got to watch and hang out, and we're highly entertained by just observing, right? One doesn't always have to interact. You can go out and just observe as well. And then remembering that every time you do interact with someone, if you're triggered or they're triggered, it's still a meant to be situation. And if you're not out there being triggered to see what you need to work on, then eventually you will. Like, there's just no avoiding it. It's important to
Yeah.
remember that's part of the process, and to not be hard on yourself even around that. Norma Jean?
Oh yeah, it's since we've come on, it's just been so synchronistic and so beautiful in its harmony and its flow, that this is our chance and opportunity at this point in time to realize and recognize that our choices are just the same. They're not as much, you know, make or break. At this point, it's going to be, can we realize or recognize that when it comes to a point where we need to make a choice, or where a choice is presented before us, is can we step back and stand in that discernment and allow our heart to lead us or guide us or give us the information that tells us something very vitally important about that choice? Whether it be that we've made that choice before, or it's something that has been made in our lineage. This is our chance and opportunity to recognize something that we get to alchemize right now that we haven't been able to in so long, because we have the full complete freedom to do so. So this is where we understand that it's just taking responsibility and accountability for our actions, due to knowing that we have more control, full complete control of our choices and where we go from here. Just as Jon was speaking about the GPS and, you know, knowing what coordinates to plug in. This may be one of those where they may get plugged in for you, determining on the choice that you make. That this is our chance and opportunity to alchemize a lot of things, where we get that chance and opportunity to clear and let go of any and everything that has taken place up to this point, right here, right now. And then we get to start truly anew, because what I see is from these choices, what can take place from here is that complete letting go and allowing the flow that it was always meant for us individually to begin to return to us over this period of fall and winter, to prepare us for our harvest in the springtime, where we plant, and then we begin to see that abundance of what it is that we plant due to the choices we make right here, right now, in this period. So it's about the cycles. It's about the cycles of self. It's about the cycles that we experience here in this place called the manifestation realm. That things that have been done unto us will begin to be returned to us because of the undoing. That a lot of these old energies are being moved out to clear the path and the way for us as humans to begin to make greater and more significant choices for us as a collective, as a whole. So know that this is a beautiful time, whether it be that you choose to stay in activity as you're going through these changes, or that you begin to prepare for that moment of solitude, where you take yourself out so much from the activities and you sit with self to reflect that way. Because reflection is no different from meditation. It just all depends on about your approach and how, you know, what that method illuminates for you.
Well said. Well said, and absolutely, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, it's a beautiful conversation, and the ability to triage from our different perspectives that which is going on right now is quite profound. So yeah, thank you, Norma. That was beautiful. And yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's no perfect way except your way for you. So nobody can tell you how you should do anything. You have to determine it for you. And I always say, base it by how does it make you feel? Yeah. How does it make you feel? Absolutely. Cycles of life. Our family had a wonderful cycle gift happen today. My son's dog passed from us a few days ago, and already there's been a replacement dog, same breed, young and healthy, that has the name of one of my sons when he was little. No coincidence. No, absolutely not.
Oh.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely beautiful, and could even be the same dog energetically, right? We've been seeing quite a bit of that lately.
Yeah.
This next eclipse is more of a solar eclipse, right? All right.
It's a solar eclipse. I don't think that we'll see it. It'll be mostly over the Pacific and then maybe a little bit of South America. But I think we're going to feel it because I can't remember feeling a lunar eclipse this significantly before.
Yeah.
And, the solar eclipse was significant, but I thought, well, maybe it's because we saw it. So, you're in the wake of it. But even people who weren't in the wake of it still felt it. And it was way more intense than the one in 2017, which was, strange and it had its moments. But like the octave has just been raised through the roof, basically. So
Yep.
I'm interested to see how that plays out because, again, that'll be days after we get that second moon. Maybe that supernova will be happening at the same time if they think it's going to be by the end of September. And what else happens? Then there's something else that happens.
We have a new moon.
The new moon, yeah, the other eclipse.
October 2nd.
So,
October 2nd is also the new moon. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So it'll be launching all of that, and then we'll be headed right into Halloween season when the veil rips open anyways, regardless of what's going on astrologically. So, and that's minutes before election day, and that's irrelevant, but it's like the psychic energy that's coming from all of that. It's like, even if you're not paying attention to it, I think it's good right now to really distinguish between what's yours and what's not yours, because I have those moments where I'm just minding my business and then a wave of anxiety comes over me and I'm like, I'm not even stressing about something right now. Where is this even coming from? Was it the sugar that I ate? And it's like, no, I think it's just the broadcast of stress that's all around us. It doesn't matter who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rest well, Andrea. I would fully agree, because even for me, because I'm like generally pretty calm as a cucumber, especially when I'm out and about. But yeah, I pick up stuff all the time. And I'm like, no, 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 that's not mine. No, I'm not. I don't want it. Send it to the sun, send it to Earth, right? Like, no, thank you. I got enough going on right here, right now with me. So yeah. And we were talking about Halloween earlier today, weren't we, Norma Jean?
We were. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially given, the information that, keeps bringing about the enormous amount of clarity that I keep receiving about where we are, what's taking place, who you are, who Jon is, how these connections are coming to be, because it was one of those that the front runners, this is where we begin to show that gratitude for the ones that came here before us, that paved a way for us to be sitting here right now, being able to speak clearly and truthfully and honestly of self in our own experience in this evolutionary period in time, where we are so blessed to know we've done it. Now all we must do is work through all of what took place and do it from that observable position. You can do away with the court system now. Do away with the judge. Do away with that judge that sits here and tells you this, that you're judged for this, that, or the other. Now's the time to be able to come in and have that compassion for self and observe that the choices you made were made merely from where you were, given where you were at and what you were given. Now's the time for us to be able to step up and say, this is my life. It's my time. And I get to choose what I do with that through my will, through my intent, and through my focus of that intention. And this is where these next few months are really going to just bring forth that clarity that I hear and feel that people are seeking and wanting so much, so that they can feel that load lift. Because you see, now it's you. It's you that must drop that load by realizing and recognizing that this is where you're just being gifted the opportunity to understand your role through the lineage in which you are birthed in. You get to alchemize that and say, no more. This will never take place again. I choose that not, for that is not who I am in the here and now. in this form. So it's one of those that begin to see the beauty you are, because the beauty will begin to show up around you.
Yeah. Honor thyself, love thyself, get to know yourself. This is all the
Yeah.
stuff we've been talking about for some time and giving you the tools. So when you start to feel a little off, what's in your toolbox? What can you recall in that moment in time to drop in, John?
Yeah, no, and that's well said, Norma, because that was a theme that was coming up in the readings that I was doing about. It was very much so the Nine of Cups energy. So the Nine of Cups usually talks about being at peace with your past and being at peace with the journey and all of that. And like you were saying in terms of the judge that lives up here, it's like I really do think we do have a great amount of influence over what we would call karma, in terms of like the idea that expectation creates reality. So if you expect to experience blowback for something, you will, because you're kind of creating that. But the other side of it with the Nine of Cups energy, because it almost, the Rider Waite depiction kind of looks like a bridge in terms of the way that the cups are aligned. And what I've realized, what was coming through at least like one reading, and then that was the epiphany where I'm like, oh, I get this energy. As long as you're not proud about something petty you did, like say you did something petty for whatever reason, you retaliated, but you're not proud of it, you wouldn't go back and repeat it. It's like that in and of itself is you learning the lesson. If you're still petty about it and you double down and you're like, you know what, I'm glad I gave her the finger on the highway because it's like that's a completely different kind of energy. But if you look back and say, you know what, I would choose to do differently, it does alchemize it in a different way and release you from that, and you can qualify it as is. But then the flip side of it too is like, be careful of the judgments that you cast on other people, because it's very much so the glass house principle is that it's like you are judging yourself, and if you do condemn somebody for something, it's like you're condemning yourself. And if you're doing that same thing, which 9 times out of 10 our pet peeve is the thing that we need to work on, it's like that you have to be careful about, projecting onto others. And like you were saying with compassion, it's really just about having compassion for yourself, but then also remembering that hurt people, and kind of leaving it at that, right? You don't need to accept it or glorify it, but just say, you know what, I wish you peace, and move on. So
Absolutely. It's funny because recently we've been having a conversation. We have a blue jay who's decided that coming in and stealing all the food is right, or her right.
oh yeah.
And we're like, okay, how do we deal with this without judging the bluebird? And it's pretty funny. It's been interesting. So we've got many critters outside that we've been feeding, and then every time a new one comes in, there has to be an adjustment, right? So we're like, okay, how do we adjust for this? The crows are easy. They don't jump on the window box, they don't jump on the bird feeder. But this particular little, friend he loves to be it's a bit of a disruptor, and he's really loud too.
These are chaos.
Oh yeah, they're bullies.
Right? Right in our front yard. Which is fascinating because, it's like we're talking about stuff and it's being shown, it's playing out right in front of us. Yeah. Playing out.
Yeah, it's
well, another thing I'm seeing. No, I'm sorry, Norma.
You go right ahead, John. I was just saying it was fascinating just to watch all this,
Right?
Yeah.
We had to step back. We had to okay, we can't control this. We just gotta let it play out.
It's like the Real Housewives of the Animal Kingdom, it's just nonstop. But one thing that I've been noticing, just at least on the streets in the last week, has been like a lot of people that I know that are more sensitive to energy. So people that might already be dealing with mental illness or anything like that, whether it's people I see on the street, or there's this one coffee shop that I work at sometimes. So I get to know a lot of people that like live in different homes that are around here. And I've noticed that their behavior has been different, and some of them have been more hyper, I think is like the best word, especially ones that are typically like people that are more low ebb and things like that. And so I guess just kind of keeping that in mind too, in terms of like things that you're witnessing on the street, and just kind of sending that compassion or that love without judgment, but also just realizing that I think there's a lot of people that are processing the energy very intensely. It's almost like everybody's kind of sticking their finger in the socket right now with the amount of energy that's moving through. So, but
You have
also, I guess,
stick your finger in the socket, or you can say, oh, I'm just going to keep all my energy in my hands to myself right now and just observe it and send love. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like getting a surge, and that's still like understanding how that energy works. I agree so much, Jon. That was profound. It's like when I look at it in the things that I've seen, and I've experienced through, what I am given through my visuals, is that when we was coming back from the debt the last time, or the diving before back in June, and I was standing outside and I was looking at the mountains, and in the mountains you see, of course, the power lines. And what I was shown was that for the longest time, looking at what we see upon Earth is the very thing that was shown that was kind of what set upon my mountains, my skin, that we had so many things plugged into us where we didn't know that our energy was being harnessed in the way that it was, because so much of the conditioning and the programs and all that was keeping us asleep from that that's how basically that's why there's this mirroring effect that Earth shows us what has been taking place and what it came to and led up to, that when we see that upon ourselves, the very things that we look at and we judge as good or bad, and not understanding that it's just opposing forces showing us exactly where we are. But when I was shown this, it was like profound for me as far as where visual was concerned, because it helped me to understand more my role in this, even if I was conscious or not conscious of what was taking place through those nefarious acts. But because I had enough cognizant about me over time as I continued on this journey, I was able to see things, maybe not as clear as I do now, but I was still able to see enough things to say, something's not right. This is not how it should be. Something must change. And now we're in that precipice, and we're in that time, in that period where enough of us said, enough's enough. This has gone far enough. What is it that we must choose to do differently now? And this is our evolutionary period. This is our cycle of the evolutionary period of the cycle within us, much less the cycle that's taking place outside. But we're a part of that. So we cannot negate ourselves from being a part of that. This would not be taking place if there was not that chance and opportunity where that connection on that collective level had not taken place.
We all, just like, we all contribute to all of it, so to speak. Whenever we berate someone that, oh, they're such a bad person, look what they've done, they deserve to be fried. And it's like, well, from a perspective, from a higher perspective, we're all souls having this human experience. We've all been here many times before. We have all played the evil, murderous, taking advantage of others person. And we're all intricately connected because we all come from the same source, that when you judge another, you're judging yourself.
Yep.
And so this is probably the most poignant time and place where everyone's like, want to see them all fry. And I'm like, yep, yeah, but you don't.
You're doing it to you.
Right? You're doing it to yourself. And so it's I'm not going to say it's easy. It's part of the process. But you come to a point where you're just at peace with it. And yes, the children, and I will share again, and maybe you guys can give your insight on this as well, that the souls that came in, and if we always know what we're doing before we come in, doesn't mean we know when it's happening, but we know before we come in what we've agreed to and the role we agreed to play. And those souls get such an soul expansion that this space and time when we come in here is like it's like a dream. It's like such a short time to the infinite being that we are, that as we come in and this happens to us, and yes, the soul checks out pretty quickly, guys, just going to say, not to say that it still isn't awful and to witness or experience, but to say that that expansion, they agreed to come in to have that expansion. And so we're all here on this Earth School for lessons, to learn more about us, to manifest, to use these 5 senses, to play, because just as the consciousness, we don't get to do that. And so there's all kinds of places to incarnate into and have these experiences. This particular one got a little dark, and we were all involved in that. And so now we're here and we are choosing to do differently, to be different. But it's us. Nobody's rescuing you. It's you. You choose. You choose what you want. Jon?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Mhm.
we have no idea how this place really works at the end of
Right.
the day in terms of
True.
any kind of incarnation or anything like that. But I definitely believe, at least for this particular chunk of time that we're living through, that there
Yeah,
are plenty of different volunteers at different levels, even down to different animals that I think are volunteer spirits that are here to just
absolutely.
anchor things in and experience. And it's so complex to even wonder, but I definitely think that, again, like you were saying, in terms of the power of choice, it's like the freedom to even not make a choice in certain circumstances, especially when it comes
Yes.
to like all of the pressure around the elections and things like that.
Or
There was
judgment. Yeah.
or any kind of judgment, exactly, where just before I had gotten on here, I saw on social media there was a pop star that was trending because she made a statement that she didn't want to endorse anybody, and that in and of itself was controversial. But I was happy to even see that as a talking point, because it's like, first of all, if anyone is making any decision because they want to know what Taylor Swift thinks, you shouldn't be voting. But the second thing is that it's like we need to be able to be okay with not having to make a choice, or keeping that choice to yourself, or whatever it may be. But it's like that kind of is the ultimate red pill in a type of way, at least now, that it's like you don't have to pick a side. I mean, if you were a kindergarten teacher and you had 2 bratty children that were fighting with each other in your class, you wouldn't sit down and say, oh, well, Jimmy made a good point. It's like they're both kindergarten children. You would put them both in timeout and say, I'm not listening to either of you. I don't care what you have to say. And that's what I feel about all of these choices that we're forced to make, whether it's picking a side in a war or picking a side in politics or anything. It's like,
Just
if
meant to
again,
divide. It's all division.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just check out and say, you know what? I don't have to get messy. I don't have to get in the mud.
I choose
And
to
I
just
can,
observe. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
And and I don't know for absolute fact. It's just what I keep being shown. So, Norma Jean, for you.
There's so much that we could go into this, especially, given what I drew up on the board here, to understand that,
Yeah.
this is where I feel I need to share the reminding of the joy of a child.
Yes.
And I came into this the other day, and I was talking to T, and it was very quite profound that when a child is born, when that child cries, the mother and father are there, and they're joyous. And because of that cry is the first cry of the child, and that cry is of joy for the first breath that is taken within the lungs that produces the first word that child will speak. And for the longest time, I remember, reading a lot in history that it was always deemed as a war cry. Not anymore. The cry of a child now is to remind us of the joy that we came in with, to come here and be a part of this, to change this and alchemize what's been created here. That to be reminded that that first breath is the cry of the child to speak its first word through the joy of the love of the gift to come here and experience itself in the manifest. That was our gift to self. We were given that honor to be reminded that when you hear that child cry, that child reminds you of the love and the joy you came in with. It reminds us why we are here. And it's amazing that I come into that information because I have not birthed a child myself. So for me, that was significantly powerful. But I've seen it so many times that as soon that when my sister had her first son, my nephew, the love that welled up within my heart, it was like the feeling of a cup. And looking and seeing that now, they're coming to understand that the heart does not pump blood. It's a vortex. So it moves the blood and it purifies the blood, for it is moving in and out of dimensions that exist within us because that's where we come from. To be reminded that that love still exists in every single one of us in that heart, because that's what connects us. Every single one of us. That's why we should always stay at the heart of every matter. Matter is the gift to be able to come here and express the heart for self, with others. And I feel that's a very powerful message to give here. To be reminded that love is what is changing this. For a lot of us are coming back into that love that is within our heart, because we're being led by the heart now. Not by the programs, not by the confusion, not by the chaos, but to understand that when we first arrive here, we are whole. The only thing that is divided is the contrast of the masculine and feminine. And they only become divided because of the programs and the controllings of that energy within us. So when we come and we understand that everything that we look at and we do not judge and we allow to just show us how to alchemize, brings us closer and closer back to the wholeness of the being that we came here being, that we are. So allow that love to remind you why you're here. Because you are that love. Because it was joy that brought you here. For the love of the experience. For the love to become and be the very thing that assists in this change, in this alchemization, and to understand everything has a beauty to it, no matter how ugly it was. Because we had to have these experiences. That's just what we do, because energies exist. We're not the only energetics. But it's not about good and bad. It's about the contrast and understanding in this contrast. Is this value? Is this value for myself? And is this value for humanity as a whole? And if not, to move it out of the way. See it for what it's showing us. Change, evolution, cycles. For we are always evolving. And in that evolving, it takes a cycle to understand what works, what's of value, and what is not.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Love makes the world go round. Love and authenticity. Would you like to add anything else to that, Jon?
Yeah, and that lack of judgment, that was always something that I thought was interesting about, like in the beginning in Genesis when they're walking through the garden and yada yada. It's like that chapter was always just very fascinating to me. Not to make this a Bible thing, I'm not trying to make this Christian at all, but just in terms of like the coding of the message and the whole thing about the trees. I was always fascinated about the trees, especially when that rabbit hole opened up that there might have been gigantic trees at one point, and I had to revisit all of that. But what I didn't know was that when they're in the garden and he first creates them, he says that their job is to name everything, right? When they're allowed to eat from the tree of life and just live in joy like children, they had to give everything its name, and it was very objective. So like the name for tree, whatever that would have been in their original language, not only was its name, but it told you about its purpose and its life cycle and all of that. It's like the language was so complex. It was like the green language, right? It wasn't just like an arbitrary type of name, but it was significant. And that also was what kind of gave them the ability to like the word is dominion, but to have like the ability to kind of work with nature and almost like Cinderella, right? Where it's like the birds are making the dress for her and that kind of relationship with nature. But then the problem with the tree of knowledge of good and evil is that that kind of implies subjectivity. That it's like as soon as subjectivity and value and good comes into place, well, once you have good, you have to have bad. And once you create these different polarized concepts, it's like it can almost poison a thing in and of itself, where it's like once you designate something as your adversary, it has to play that role in your story if you are this powerful creator being, right? So it's like it basically says that it's like the superpower that we've been given here in this matrix, in this garden, is that we give everything its name. So if you name something as an obstacle, that is the role that it will play for you. And if you name something as an adversary, that is the role that it will play. And that's kind of like the way to back engineer it, right? And we've all done it. I mean, I still have plenty of names that I need to take off the list, but I think that really just is the way to play all of that out. And yeah, and to kind of just with all of like the darkness and stuff that happens in here, it's also a matter too of kind of recognizing that it's like that aspect of things is being cleaned up. That's why it's being brought to light, because it's like theoretically it would have always been an aspect of our reality, but no one ever knew that it exists or that any of these things were happening or yada
Yeah.
yada. So it's like we are experiencing the fever to sweat out the virus, and in the process of that, it's like we're seeing, it's like doing a parasite cleanse. We're seeing the parasite. So it's like it's awful to witness it, but it's like the beauty of witnessing it is that it's like awareness is the universal solvent, and that's the thing that's going to clean it. Because it's like if nobody knew that this was happening, it's like would it be able to hide from awareness? And there's been different wild opportunities that I've had in the last like 2 years or so to do readings for celebrities, and they were people that were close enough to the fire, but they never really signed the contract themselves, but they found themselves in very scary situations. And like the cross that they've had to bear since then is, why was I even allowed in that room? Why would my guardian angels have let me see what I saw and know what I know? And what came through all of those readings was that it was like, it's like your eyes are the eyes of the divine, that there were spaces in this place, believe it or not, that even if you want to call it God, God couldn't even see what was going on in that room because of the levels of black magic and yada yada and everything that was happening, or was underground or whatever. But because you saw it, the construct saw it. And that's why I think so many things are being cleaned up right now, because there's white hats at every rung of the ladder, and they witness things that were, I guess, shielded, for lack of a better term, whatever it may be. And we've all been there. We've all had our experiences where it's like we saw something and we just like Wi-Fi'd it right up to source, right up to whoever, right up to the home team, and they came right in, and it's like sending the GPS coordinates or something. And I think a lot of us have been doing, we've been like mapping this place out basically. So I think it's like the double edge to the times that we're living through, because it's horrible to witness or consider or even hear about. But the beauty of rejecting it through our own horror is that it's being acknowledged as something that needs to be deleted. Because that's the whole thing, going back to astrology, where it's like how I've said how the Sumerians knew that the eclipses were bad omens for their kings because they were all imposters. So they would demote the king during eclipse season and replace it with a peasant or a fool so that the karma would be deflected. It's like, I
Yes.
think that for thousands of years, they've been figuring out how to override and deflect the karma and hide it. And, you know, the law of telling you what we're doing so that you can accept, that doesn't work anymore. Something happened recently that it doesn't work. And I think it's because of the awareness that people like you guys and us are bringing to this, but then also the rejection of it through that awareness, not glorification, not any kind of excuse or anything like that. It's just like, nope, that is, we're not tolerating it 0%. And that's why it's being cleaned up. And that's why P. Diddy's sitting in a cell right now and we're not. So that's pretty much it. So.
Right. And yeah, and have gratitude for that, right? Whether he's
Yeah.
an actor or not, which I don't know, doesn't look quite the same anymore. So that's why it's
Right.
you know so hard to even like tap into anything 'cause it's all part of the show. For those of you in the chat, I have connected and put John's YouTube channel in there. Also, we have Jon. It's readingswithjon@gmail.com. And I'm sure I have that as a ticky tape. All the high tech I've got at my fingertips. Yeah. I know we've got you on here. Yeah, there it is. Readingswithjon@gmail.com.
Oh, wow.
Want to book a reading? See? Magic!
That's so cool. Yeah.
Right? This is StreamYard. StreamYard's fabulous for doing these streamings. And so I want to thank those of you that have been watching over on Instagram. We're very grateful. And Rumble, we're always grateful for all of you. Same with YouTube, Facebook, whoever shows up, LinkedIn, whoever's meant to see this will always see it. And all we're doing is giving our perspectives from our experiences and our beliefs and what we've come into, and truly believing that everything is energy. And you have an opportunity to shift your energy, to shift your outer world by shifting your inner world. Final words are Norma and then Jon.
Oh yeah, you know, get in dialogue with yourself, man. Find an interest in who you are in all this, given that you have that contrast within you. Get to understand that masculine and feminine and what divided them within themselves, which gives you that chance and opportunity to harness that understanding. That contrast just gives you the chance and opportunity to step back. Oh, it gives you so many epiphanies about this world, about this place, about what we're experiencing, which helps you to understand, oh, this was the gift I gave myself when I chose to come here. I remember now. I remember this. So get in dialogue with yourself, because I'm going to tell you, man, I thought I could get in arguments and have great conversations with other people. No. Nothing compares to being able to do it with yourself. And you'll be amazed at how many other parts of yourself will begin to show up that you didn't know existed. And when those other parts of yourself start to show up, you begin to understand, you're beginning to collect every bit of who you are in this, and understand that in every area of this multiplistic experience is beginning to show up to help you become whole once more in your understanding of why you're here. So have fun with yourself. Get in arguments with yourself. It doesn't matter. Just do it with a passion you've never thought existed, because it resides within your heart, because that passion is what will alchemize everything that you've ever judged or put a definement to, and be able to have that greater understanding of this thing called life.
Beautifully said, Norma. Jon?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Norma. I like that, to start an argument with yourself. Honestly, well, because I've done it so many times, and it really is, you're absolutely right, to be so, it's powerfully alchemizing everything, but to hear all of those different perspectives, and it really is profound when you do it right. So I appreciate that as homework. And the one thing I would say is to challenge yourself to be spontaneous, because I can find, like, especially if I am trying to change my timeline or my algorithm or anything like that, that there is magic in spontaneity of breaking out of your routines and doing something that you typically wouldn't do, or ordering a food or a drink that you typically wouldn't, or just something that is so outside of your own bingo card of possibilities that it's like it can't help but break the matrix and force it to kind of reconfigure itself to keep up with you. And there's been a lot of times that I've experimented with that and had a lot of fun with it, and it is really just like a great way to timeline jump, honestly, and in a very fun way. But it's worth it. So I'll leave it on that. Be spontaneous.
Yeah, be spontaneous. Absolutely. And we didn't get a lot of readings in with Jon today, but we certainly got a lot of information from his collective readings, which his perspective is so valuable in that way, because he's working with a cross section of people, so to speak, and has some very good insights. Plus, his own intuition is incredible. So, yeah, thank you, Jon, for coming back on. We look forward to having you again. And I think
Thank you for
next
having
time,
me.
yeah, I'd really love to have it so we can have a little astrology at the same time too. I think that would be a fun
Oh
conversation.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
that would
It's
be
like I
fun.
feel like this is our little sandbox and we get to come in here and play. If
Yeah.
you want to join the sandbox and play too, we do have a membership within Adventures for Connection. So you can go to the website. All the links are down below. And for, very little a month, you get a lot of value. So consider, if you're interested and you have any questions, reach out. But we're having a lot of fun in there, and we talk about some things as a collective in there that we don't talk about on public. So it's a little more private and a beautiful circle. So consider checking it out. Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn. Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone always gets what they need, right? All right. I'll leave you there. Have a beautiful night. Jon, stick around for a minute. And we're
All
sending
right,
you all
y'all.
love. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming and being here. You're appreciated.